Hearing that Cebu Pacific's A330 NEO will be making its first revenue flight, we quickly booked a trip to Cebu, hoping to be one of its first passengers to experience this carrier's newly acquired aircraft. But today had its surprises. Find out how our story unfolds only here. Where else? We arrived very early in the morning at Manila International Airport Terminal 3, notoriously known for its terrible and ridiculously long lines. And the first to greet us here is the inconvenience of having to line up for almost an hour just to make it inside this terminal's departure hall. If it wasn't for Cebu Pacific's A330 NEO aircraft, I'd avoid setting foot in this place, and you'll later see why. After making it through the first security check, we're made to realize that our trouble isn't over, and it actually just began. The departure hall is simply filled with a sea of people, and adding to the stress, you can't forget about social distancing. There's just plenty of lines with lots of confused and irate travelers. The place is simply chaotic. Now, what seems to be saving us from further distress are the presence of self-check-in kiosks, where we still needed to queue up for our turn to print our own boarding passes and baggage tags needed for bag drop. Now, if you think you can simply breeze through this process, well, think again. And try to bring a lot of patience. You're definitely gonna need it here. After a few minutes, it was our turn to use the kiosks. Just by typing in our locator numbers and presenting our QR codes, our machine immediately prints out our boarding passes. If you have no check-in luggage, you can just go straight to the gate. But in our case, we simply regret having to check some bags in simply because there's extra kilos allotted to us for the type of fare we pay. Because of this, our horrible experience in Terminal 3 just got worse. This is often the reality of flying on budget carriers, having to endure such inconvenience for the money they think they've saved. With only a few counters open serving this many travelers, waiting in line seems to take forever.
30 minutes. Kalahating oras na.
By the time we reached the counter, it already consumed another hour of our time, with some irate passengers behind me already yelling at some airport staff. If it wasn't for the A330 NEO, I would have paid a little extra to get a little more comfort on another airline. Now, what infuriates travelers even more is another set of long line on another security check. This just had some passengers screaming their lungs out towards these poor airport staff. And just as we thought our troubles are over, along comes another scenario. Almost all of the gates are filled with people. Worse, we are not flying aboard what we expected to be Cebu Pacific's A330 NEO. It's a big plane, and it's taking a while for passengers to board as each one is screened at the gate for compliance to Cebu Pacific's very strict rule in bringing only one hand-carried item. With our boarding passes verified, Josh and I make our way towards the aero bridge, dismayed over what we've hoped would be today's revenue flight for Cebu Pacific's newly delivered A330 NEO aircraft. Oh well, maybe some other time.
Morning. Sayang, kala ko hindi nyo gagamitin.
Oo nga.
Sayang. Oo. Sinakyan namin. Bye.
Anyway, it's been a long while since I last flew aboard Cebu Pacific's A330 CEO, and it's just good to be back trying out this aircraft again. With that said, instead of taking my assigned seat at the forward section, I decided to just walk along further, all the way to the back to explore the cabin for a bit. With travel buddy Josh also curious and restless, we decided to go and see what's happening, especially at the rear galley. Now, this aircraft has a cabin length of about 208 feet, and it's gonna take a bit of a long walk till we reach the far end. And for the rare times we get to fly Cebu Pacific, we might as well explore the entire cabin while we can, meticulously looking how this plane's interior is set up, from the arrangement of its seats, the legroom, and the feel of comfort it gives, even if it seems there's just too many people accommodated in one confined space. This A330 is often deployed in long-haul routes and features a one-class configuration, having 436 standard economy class seats. Meanwhile, what makes up from all the troubles we had checking in earlier for this flight is the warm and hospitable treatment towards us by crew members, which led to interesting conversations and insights about today's supposed A330 NEO flight.
Last minute. operation? Oo, parang sa NEO din kayo na?
Yes, pinag-check namin, release po namin.
Training na kayo?
Yes, sir.
Tingnan mo, ready na sila. Oo, ang sabi na balita.
Naging Johnson daw yung NEO eh.
Na?
Johnson daw yung next niya. Pero may Cebu pa siya.
Okay, sayang. Anyway, sasakay tayo eh. That means sasakay tayo ulit sa Cebu Pacific. Thank you, ma'am.
With our seats assigned up front and with passengers coming in, we decided to stay near the galley for a bit, further conversing with crew members who informed us that they too expected that they will be flying aboard the A330 NEO today. Sad to say, this isn't gonna be its first revenue flight, and all I can do is, well, just explore the CEO's rear lavatory for all else that I can feature in this cabin. So far, I can assume that Cebu Pacific maintains a good standard in keeping their lavatories neat, as with the A321 NEO I flew on with the same airline the last time. With passengers still filling up the cabin, we've been allowed to stay here a bit longer. Soon, a surprise. A subscriber from my YouTube channel, James Agustin, pops out of nowhere, meeting him in person for the first time.
Frustrated NEO natin. Hi, this is
Frustrated NEO pa.
frustrated.
Sobrang na-stress ako kasi actually binong ko to kung Saturday.
Oo.
Sabi ko
Kami nung isang araw lang.
Kami 2 days ago lang. Tapos last minute, sabi ni Mark.
Sana sumakay pala ng NEO.
Hello, enthusiast din.
Oo. Hi.
wala na pag-aasa.
Dapat kami operating first week sila na ba yung second week?
Bale, kailan balik mo kuya?
Mamaya. Oh, ikaw rin? Pasupal ako.
Ako later, 563.
Okay.
Well, it's nice to have a subscriber turn instant travel buddy on the same flight where we all share the same sentiment of being frustrated and a bit disappointed. With all passengers settled, we quickly make our way to our assigned seats, with mine located at 11A and having a good view of the engine behind. After some time, crew members perform their safety demo in front of passengers, whereby then, our plane has already started its pushback. As our plane rolls out and makes its way to the runway, the elusive A330 NEO shows up in view from our windows. It's there where I can only sigh out of frustration as it momentarily presents itself in sight before swearing that I will be flying aboard it hopefully sometime soon. And after savoring what I consider a short but remarkable display, we are finally speeding up along the runway. Cebu Pacific's Big One is flying us all the way to Cebu. Cabin was calm as we continued to climb, as if this was the peace we needed after all the chaos we had to endure earlier at the airport. While most passengers took this time to take a nap, I still find myself restless, amazed at the wonders of flight despite my frequent air travels. And as usual, during these times that I'm stuck for a bit in my seat, I'd inspect my space around me, especially my seat and the stuff in front of me, beginning with my tray table. What I only have here is an air sickness bag and a safety card, both what you'd usually find in any airline you'd take. Soon, crew members are seen walking along the aisle, and as much as I'm used to the routine of getting in-flight snacks handed out for free, it ain't happening on this budget carrier. So instead, Josh and I would hang out at the back. Cebu Pacific has suspended selling in-flight snacks, but what makes up for the absence of meals is the overwhelming in-flight service. Today's crew members just made us feel like VIPs.
Thank you, sir.
Okay lang, sir.
Compliments. Thank you, Lara.
Asan ba yung kasama nila?
Isa sa Milan. Sa 31A.
31A.
May isa pa kasi ko, ano, seat.
Sige po.
Thanks, Lara. Thank you.
Knowing there are no snacks given on board, we brought our own rice meals. But for crew members to hand out complimentary bottled drinks was a sign of goodwill we very much appreciated. And not too long, our aircraft begins to descend, with flight attendants seen again, this time preparing passengers for arrival. It was only a matter of minutes before getting to Cebu, and after some last-minute checks, we were landing in Mactan Cebu International Airport. We finally made it to Cebu, and as much as how I wished this would have been the first domestic flight of Cebu Pacific's A330 NEO, well, I guess it's just not the right time yet. But still, we're made to experience impressive treatment by the crew in these rare times I fly aboard this airline. And so passengers are made to disembark, and once most of them up front have left, we make our way forward, hoping to get a chance to visit the flight deck. Subscriber James followed, and surprisingly, another subscriber, Jomar Andaya, happens to be on board, making him another instant travel buddy.
Jomar? Ay, nice to meet you. Si Mitch po. Yun, kasama ka na sa vlog. Jomar. Wala, ang dami natin frustrated. Meron din ako mga...
Nag-book ka lang for this, Hindi, I was expecting.
I guess what we all four have in common is that we're all frustrated, made by changes in Cebu Pacific's flight operations. According to information we got, some documents weren't ready for the said aircraft to fly today. Well, at least it has brought us flying together under the same interest, and I still enjoy the surprises. Meanwhile, we make our way to try our luck if we can visit the flight deck. So off we go to approach the crew members to ask for permission. As much as the flight attendants wanted to help by relaying our request, the pilots were quite preoccupied to accommodate us for now. So, we just gave our thanks, especially to the wonderful treatment they gave us, and we then made our way to disembark. Overall, it was still a good flight experience. We're happy enough to be mingling with the crew and getting a few insights from them. But just before we go, we just had to take a few souvenirs of our trip. And that means having the crew members join us for a photo op.
Dito na kami, nakalabas na kami. Kuya, ate, ma'am. Pwede ba pa-picture, ma'am? Dito pa ma'am, pa-picture na lang po. Thank you.
Para lang sa
Ako later.
Bye-bye. Madali kami. Bye-bye.
Well, NEO or not, this trip was still guaranteed to be a blast. I admit, we still had a grand time not only with the crew members.
So, meron tayong instant subscribers at saka travel buddies. So, si James na kasama na. Wala ko kayo, kasama ka.
One way looking at today's flight, it may not have been the A330 NEO, but nonetheless, I've personally met my subscribers, strengthening our bond as friends, and having instant travel buddies whom we can share and recall memories of this trip. For Airline Travel and Airports, along with James, Jomer, and Josh, this is Mitch Young. Thank you very much for watching.